What was your first gig?
The first thing I worked on was Captain Britain. Which strangely was one of Chris's first gigs many years before.
You're looking at a rare group of 3 people who have worked on Captain Britain at different times.
And all 3 of us got fired. From Captain Britain.
I didn't get fired.
Oh, damn it.
Me neither.
I quit. I left for greener fields, although I did tie it up. You know, it wasn't no, I got fired.
Was that with Deskin?
No, Deskin had worked at Marvel UK, but he was long gone. It was Paul Neary who was the editor-in-chief when I was at Marvel UK.
I learned that the fatal mistake of never get into a creative argument with Stan's younger brother. Because if push comes to shove, you're not going to win the fight.
So when John Byrne came on, how did that affect the vision or the direction of the X-Men?
He drew a lot faster than Dave. We went monthly, I mean, basically.
Yeah.
We went monthly. Dave appealed to the cool, the side of me that loved, you know, hey, let's do a double page of aliens fighting in outer space around a binary star system 55 billion light years from Earth. And it's like, wow, this is cool. So we drew Lalandra's army having a fight, and then we brought the Lalandra to Earth, and then we did, hey, let's do leprechauns. Cool. You know, the beauty with Dave was that you could come up with anything, and he would find a way to present it to you in a visually breathtaking, unexpected, and altogether, holy cow, you could draw this in comics? Attitude. It was wonderful. It was impassioned. It's like, we seemed to create characters every time we took a breath. It's like, hey, who are the Star Generals? Well, it's Cyclops' dad and his alien friends. And it's like, wow, this is sort of weird, but neat. And his favorite character was Nightcrawler, which is why Kurt, you know, have 3 swords, we'll travel. Logan was okay, but not his favorite. The distinct differentiation when John came on the book was that in certain respects the stories came much more down to earth. I mean, with Dave you had the guy who drew the Legion of Superheroes for 2 years, and inventing cool aliens was like breathing. It was fun, it was natural. With John, he could do all the stuff that Dave did, but he looked at it from a more level, dare I say, Canadian perspective. Oh yes, and he liked the little guy. And suddenly, Logan moves up the food chain and never sort of let go. And
sort of clawed his way to the top.
With a little help from his friend.
With a little help.
He got by. And then, you know, we killed off the redhead.
I think people may have heard about that.
Oh yes, and condemned the future to a never-ending dystopia ruled by giant robots.
Yes!
Thank you.
We're fans of never-ending dystopias ruled by giant robots. That's good. Your robot masters will reward you well for that. Now I know that when Louise Joan Simonson came aboard as editor, she became an important part of the collaborative and creative process.
No, she was just the brains.
Can you talk a little bit about how she affected the evolution? And And the role of an editor in general.
Wheezy's, well, ideally the role of editor is to get out of the way and be available whenever the creative team, the writer, needs a sounding board. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're pitching a story that's a codswallop, you know it. You just have to be pitching it. And a good editor knows how to listen and knows what to do when the writer realizes this is a disaster, which is, have you thought of this character? Yeah. Oh, yeah, we could do this, or this, or this. The thing with Wheezy is, aside from being one of the 3 most charming human beings on the planet, and one of the better writers in the world, and one of the demon editors in the world, and, you know, with Walter, just a creative team that is breathtaking. She trusted the people that she worked with, and you trusted her. And so a plot session with her was just 2 folks sitting down, exchanging ideas and coalescing them into a storyline that was hopefully good, but surprisingly in many cases turned out to be brilliant. And it's the job of an editor is not to impose their will on the book. It is to get the writer to come up with an idea that essentially imposes the editor's will on the book, but makes it all, the writer think it's all his idea.
Yeah.
So everybody's happy.
And so the Dark Phoenix saga that she...
Well, that wasn't Wheezy, that was...
She came on at
That was Summer.
Well, that was a combination, as I remember.
No, she came in at the end when we were all ready to kill each other.
Right.
Because Salicrup had happily greenlit the story and not told Jim, which apparently there's a problem when you expunge a species of 5 billion people and there's no consequence. You know, mass murder, genocide, still only a comic book, don't worry about it.
And so when Shooter decided that had to change, was Wheezy in place, or was that...
Well, that was the point where...
She walked into that.
Yeah, that was the point where Jim... she was going to take over the next issue anyway. And Jim decided, time to jump in with both feet off the top of the head. I was actually drunk at the time, so... You know, I'm sorry, this is a really annoying moment because, you know, having built up to this for 15 issues, 2 years worth of work, the culmination of everything that John and I were trying to do, have it all resolved, have John working on 138, and at the very last minute be told, you've screwed it really badly. It's like, you couldn't have said this when we turned in the plots? The flip side, of course, was that it required an instant rethinking of the concept, a hefty weekend's work, an infinitely better ending, and a structure and a moment that gave the book a credibility that no other series had at the time, and would have had to this day if not for X Factor. And so it was one of those rare occasions where a disaster worked out for the best for everybody in the end.
Okay, a benign disaster. Alan, you came...
Not a benign disaster, but it was a disaster that had a happy ending.
For everybody. Alan, you came in to the X-Men when it was an established engine of popularity and the sales. Was that intimidating? And working with Chris?
Well, actually, I came into the X-Men much later than the opportunity that presented itself, because when I first started working for DC, on Battling the Outsiders. Chris actually phoned me within hours of me agreeing to do Battling the Outsiders and said, will you work on X-Men? And I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm agreeing to work on Battling the Outsiders. He said, if you signed a contract, I said, no, but I want to stick with it. The reality of the situation was I was just terrified. I thought, I don't want to be someone that goes into the X-books and kill it, you know, because it's like the biggest success. I was intimidated by Chris as a writer, by the stories that he'd done. So it took a couple more years before I had the confidence to do anything. And by that time, Chris had come up with the idea for Excalibur.
I mean, the thing with Alan was that, and I knew this from reading the stuff that he did with Alan. There was a 2-year period where I kept getting the Allens confused. It was very annoying. And they looked nothing alike, thank God. What I found was someone whose kinetic storytelling was as good as anyone I'd seen. And at that point, you know, you're talking Dave, John, Frank, a whole host of classic artists by anybody's terms. I found, as a writer, an ability to present characters who were different, who were unique, who were incredibly cool, that just glancing at them made you want to know what happened next. I mean, I was addicted to the 6-pagers you were doing for
Marvel Comics Unlimited?
No, this is in London. Not Marvel Man.
Darren Quinch.
Yes, Darren Quinch. Something, if you can ever find it, buy it, read it. It is the most brilliant stuff. And it's funny, it's exciting, it's inventive. You know, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I gotta get a piece of this guy. Because I knew, seeing it, I could throw probably anything Alan's way and he would be able to present it to the audience with not only with style, but with this fundamental charm that would take even the most horrific moment and you'd read it and you'd want to see what happens next because visually you were just wrapped up in it. So I wanted him on the X-Men, and that didn't work. Happily created a new series for him, which I grabbed a hold of every character I created, every character that he created, an extraneous couple of X-Men, and went off to the races. And it was wonderful. I mean, readers may think the Cross-Time Caper went on too long, but they are about 7 of the most glorious issues for me as a writer I had ever seen, and the best John Carter story I ever got my hands on. With, you know, the 2-parter with Kitty. But the wonder of Excalibur and of the X-Men with John is up, as with Dave, as with Byrne. I could toss anything his way, and he would nail it. Or even more annoyingly, in a fun sense, come up with an even better idea, visual idea. And as a writer, you shouldn't ask for more, because that's just too much fun.
So I think it might be time to open up the floor to some questions from the folks in the audience. Anybody? Yes, sir. You, yes.
Yeah, if you had sole creative control of the X-Men for all 3 of you, for the next foreseeable future, what direction would you put it in?
If we had sole creative control over the X-Men, what direction would we take it in?
I'd sell the movie rights back to Marvel.
I don't know. I think like Chris, I've got such a fond memory for the old stuff. I'd be very much into doing old stories again, or try and recapture something of the old stories. I find the new stuff difficult to relate to. I know I maybe shouldn't say that, but I don't know if it's just my age that it's not being created for people of my age, but it doesn't feel like anything that I understand or can associate myself with.
And I would just say all dazzler all the time. What am I feeling about? Yes, sir.
I'll keep trying till I get it right.
Can you discuss, like, any of you guys, like, the writing process, like how you guys create a character? Like, what is the process of making a character a real person?
Well, I can speak from the point of view of being someone who, I mean, I should maybe explain that when I started in comics, I had no training. I'd never been to art school. I'd never had any experience inside the comic business until I started working on Captain Britain. So within 3 years of starting, knowing absolutely nothing, I was being offered the X-Men. And that was why I was intimidated. Now, I'd originally worked on full scripts. When I started working with Chris, it was plots, which is like a stream of consciousness. And it's incredibly dense and takes time to assimilate. It's basically something that you read a couple of times and then let percolate, because it is stream of consciousness. It doesn't make immediate sense. But once you've I don't mean that as an insult to Chris in any way. I mean, it is just so dense that it's very difficult to try and coordinate your mind with someone else's thought processes. So what you have to do is distill the essence of it, focus on it, and then come up with something that you think is close to what they're thinking, which is often not even close. But fortunately, in Chris's case, that excites him, the fact that you're giving him something that he's not expecting. And I think that if you look at the arc of Excalibur, you'll see that the first few issues, they're rigid, because I was trying to break the plot down into sequential bits from the plot. By the time I got to issue 4, I understood the way that the stream of consciousness thing worked, so I would read it, try and understand it, and then would turn it into a 5, 6, 7 panel page instead of a 12 or 15 panel page, which obviously meant that what was coming back to Chris was something that had been completely twisted around and changed. But like I say, the great thing about it was that Chris never said, I don't like this. He would always be excited. Anytime that there was a problem, he would see that as an opportunity. The first one that I recall was one of the issues that we worked on before Excalibur. It was an annual where Betsy Braddock was skiing down a slope. And I said to Chris, well, actually Betsy's blind now. And rather than throwing a tantrum, as I've had with some writers, he said, brilliant, we can have her smelling colours and hearing shape, and got really enthusiastic about it. Nothing was ever a problem, and I think that's the real strength of the creative process, is that when you get someone who sees every problem as an opportunity and every change as something that strengthens the structure, and while you're working on that basis, the character kind of appears, because you're not deliberately trying to form a character. The character comes out of that interaction that I think I'm pleasing him, he thinks he's pleasing me, but what we're actually doing is creating something. And that's how it feels to me anyway.
Wow, that sounds like actual collaboration. What a concept.
But that's what it's all about. It's synergizing two creative visions and coming up with a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts.
Could I give an example? When we were doing Excalibur at first, Nightcrawler had always been a background character, someone who crouched. And with Excalibur, Chris had written some lines like, this is Nightcrawler's time to come out of the shadows and stand upright, which I took literally. I had him standing upright, which then meant, how do you get a guy with these enormous feet to stand upright without looking like a fool? So I made him stand like a ballet dancer with a sort of one foot twisted at the back, the other one. It gave him a sort of a Rudolph Nureyev type posture. Chris immediately leapt on that and says, well, this plays into the swashbuckling side of him. And so that started a ball rolling. And that's, like I say, one of the specifics where I don't know what Chris was thinking when he said he stands upright, whether it was literal or just metaphorical, but I did it literally, and Chris liked it, and that became Nightcrawler became a very stylish person, very elegant in the way that he moved.
I mean, that's the essence of the creative process. when the writer's function is to create a general vision of the reality, and in that give the artist hopefully the tools that will inspire him to come up with imagery that will convey the essence of the story. It's like, as I said, it is a collaboration, feeding foundations to Alan so that he can build the structure, so that I can look at it and kind of go, whoa! And by answering the questions posed by Alan in the structure, be inspired to the next issue or the next evolution of the character down the line. Everything builds off each other. And sometimes you get a really wild building that looks like nothing you've ever seen, like Canary Wharf in London. Other times you get the Needle, which just looks totally cool.
Well, another example I can give of this was that with the previously mentioned Mars story, the John Carter story in Excalibur, that was originally meant to be one part. And as the pages